So let's crossover. So last time I broadcasted it, I was talking about the cash thing and how that's used to control the population, how it's been used, how those four things have pretty much been utilized to keep the population at bay and to this, for the most part, successfully thwart out any kind of uprisings or challenges to white supremacy. It's actually to some extent benefited the subservient behavior of a lot of people pertaining to white supremacy. You know, because it's global, so you go anywhere, a white guy, well, a prominent white guy. Because remember, I also talk about how there is the classism too. So if you're Elon Musk, you go anywhere in the world, everybody will treat you with, you know, wanting to do business with you or something like that because you're Elon Musk. You're a very prominent white guy, even though you're from Africa, but they want to do business with you. They look forward to it, and it raises their status. Whereas if you're a Jay-Z, people know about you, but it's not so much like because of who you are. It's more so like you're like a you're more like a toy or the in thing to do. Like you're just popular, but you're not really. They don't aspire to work with you like they would an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos, because those guys, they see prominence and status and they see themselves being raised up. Whereas with the Jay-Z, that's why Jay-Z, he's not in the same category as those guys, even though he's a billionaire and he's got his own businesses and he's done successful in his own right. He's not. People don't see him as a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. He's more so just like a prop. Like, oh, that's cool. Look at that. You know. So that's why I'm gonna actually dive into conflict. I'm gonna dive. I want to talk about each one because I didn't. I really couldn't. Really, I was limited on time. I couldn't really talk about everything about each one. Sorry about that motor in the back. God damn, the thing is fucking loud. Hopefully, you can hear me better. Um, Unfortunately, where I'm at, there's a bunch of trucks and machines going on. But with conflict, um, this one, and remember, all of these can be coupled with one another. They all go along with one another. They each amplify each other's effects, and it's actually like they're like their own ecosystem, to be honest. Because if you ever know anything about a self-fulfilling prophecy, it's like once you set one of these in motion successfully, sometimes it could even be accidentally. It's like the next thing that comes up. It's like it too helps compound the result to your benefit. So then you have a thing where the victims themselves, I can't think of that complex, but the victim themselves, I think it's the Oedipus, is it the Oedipus complex? It might not be that, but the victim themselves start to sympathize with their abuser, and then they start actually helping the system work from within. They're the victims of the system, but they're helping it work because they believe it'll benefit them somehow, or they've just completely given up. And that's where the coons and the bootlicks and the sambos and the bed wenches come into play, because that's their role. They help the system. That's where the white supremacist sympathizers know you don't have to be a white person to be a white supremacist. No, if you think white is better and white is superior, and you do what you got to do to keep it that way, yeah, congratulations, you're a white supremacist. All right, so before I continue, let's start the broadcast.
put some respect on my name. You understand me? When y'all saying my name, put some respect on it.
Hello, this is Joel, the middle child, and I am going to be talking about the system that I've deemed, I refer to it as C.A.S.H, but I'm talking about the first one, the C, what the C stands for, which is conflict. And all of this is how this current system we live in, how it is utilized to keep itself going, and why white supremacy, for the time being, it could technically continue to, and just keep going and going and going. But of course, you have those like myself who constantly resist it and are aware of it. And to be honest, it becomes so obvious with some of the things. Like right now, there's a bit of desperation right now where it's so blatantly obvious that people are literally just, they can no longer hold up the charade. Because if you were to imagine something, it's easy to keep somebody a slave if you're able to successfully convince them that they're not a slave. Ironically, Kanye did release that album New Slaves, where he was mentioning this. He was referring to this and how we're actually slaves of the system. We're just a different type of slave. You have to go to work. You have to work in this system, and you have to make money to support yourself globally. There's very few places, if any, that you can go and live off grid and you don't have to contribute or work within the system at all. And even so, you won't be able to benefit from. It's like you won't be able to benefit from the things that you've become accustomed to. Running water, fresh water, vehicles to help you get around, the modern, technologies and tools. Even though you can build them, but let's just be real, you still have to utilize the system to buy the stuff you need to do so, at least within a timely manner, that is. So in a way, you're still a slave to the system. You pay taxes, no matter what you do. You got to pay taxes for your car, for your property. You have to pay taxes, otherwise it'll be taken from you, et cetera, et cetera. So we're just new types of slaves, all of us. And it is the elite at the top who ironically pay the least amount of taxes. Go figure. And they're the ones that are really benefiting from the system. That's not to say racism doesn't exist, because that's actually the first part of the conflict I want to talk about. Racism. The demonizing of a people. That's actually the first one I want to talk about when it comes to conflict. Because you remember how I said way back in, like, whenever the rebellions were happening with the monarchies, and you had the kings and the queens just constantly getting their heads chopped off. It was like a regular cycle. You have the rich, they'd accumulate too much, the poor would get too poor, and they start starving. And then revolution. And then they chop off the heads of the elite. And it would just keep going and going, because people had that selfishness about them, to where when they got into power, they pretty much they did the same thing. They accumulated the power for themselves again, and then they just kept the system going. They might have tweaked it here and there to try to make it better, but inevitably it eventually led to the same ending, which was uprising, and then the elite got their heads chopped off or exiled. Most of the time, head chopped off. So if you are able to successfully keep all those poor people, because mind you, most of the poor people here in America are white. So if you're able to keep those white people feeling some type of way, or if you're able to keep them fighting amongst each other, then they wouldn't be able to successfully fight against you. So, and if you think back in the day, it wasn't the wealthy white people that were doing all the lynching and all these evils that we hear about back during slavery and Jim Crow. No, It was the field hands who were usually poor white men. It was usually the poor whites, sometimes the middle class, that would make a spectacle of lynchings, that would go out here and commit atrocities like the false accusations against Emmett Till that led to his murder. It was usually the poor white. Actually, I'm. It's even safe to assume it was always the poor whites because they didn't have nothing to do. They wanted to exercise some type of power over these groups of people that might have been performing better than them. Because remember, in the earlier broadcast, I talked about how um, once slavery ended in an agrarian society, black people had the best skills for that. So these poor white people, they were already poor in the system, but they were giving this power or ability to exert power over the black people, which is why they did it usually to extremes. Yeah, people talk about how massa go out and rape the slaves, but so did the field hands, so did the poor white guys. And if you think about it, think about this. And here's really where the racism comes into play. Because if we're in a system, we're all white men. Just think about this. We're all white men. I know these poor white guys are absolutely capable of just the most heinous crimes. They will rape my wife and daughter if they had the chance. And they outnumber me. So how the hell am I going to keep them from trying to overthrow me and my wealth and power and make them not want to do that? Well, it's easier if they're able to get all those evils out on that other group of people that were like, hey, those people over there, yeah, those black people, yeah, you can't rape my wife and daughter, but yeah, you can go have your way with them. Because if you try that over here, you're gonna get shot. But them over there, they can't really do nothing about it. So yeah, you if you're and that's the crazy thing, because some of those poor white guys, they were jealous and envious of the rich white guys. There were occasions of where they would murder each other, right? I mean, we talk about people want to talk about black on black crime, but let's just be real. They were murdering each other all the time. But one of the ways they kept them from to some extent completely toppling the people at the top, the elites, and that's really what a lot of those people that were writing the Constitution, the George Washingtons and whatnot, they were considered the elites at the time, the wealthy white men. They wanted to keep the establishment as it was, meaning they wanted to keep their positions at the top without getting their heads chopped off, and they did so successfully. So let's let all those poor white guys, let's let them have their way with the Native Americans and the black people. Yeah, yeah, y'all can do that with impunity. Nobody's gonna come after y'all really, unless one of them, unless you get caught by one of them, then you're on your own or whatever. But yeah, you can have your way with them. Just leave me and mine alone. Otherwise, you're gonna get shot. And more times than not, that's what happened. So it was a way of them utilizing that to keep the elite white away from the violence or that type of violence from the poor white. Also, I talked about this. This trickles over into that status thing too, because now those poor white people, yeah, they're broke as a joke. They're poor. They're completely, a lot of cases, because they're not part of that elite establishment. Nowadays, you're a white person. Yeah, you have a plethora of options to get a job, to make some money. But if you're not one of those elites, if you didn't go to an Ivy League college or something like that, you're not in the elite group or category. You're pretty much never going to make it there. And one way of keeping them from uprising against the elite, because now they might see how rigged the system is, you keep them in constant, you make them feel better than a certain group of people. Hey, I'm not going to be elite. I probably will never be elite. To be honest, I'm never going to be elite, but I'm not black and I can exert some power over these black people. So actually, you know what? I'm actually pretty darn powerful. And that's where that snobbyish, and I know some of you have probably experienced it. That's where that snobbiness kind of comes from when it comes to white people. I've talked to a bunch of other people, and they always tell me how one of the reasons why I don't date white women is because, to be honest, they all live in a bubble. They all feel so highly of themselves, and they always think they're better than other people. And they're all in this little bubble that they create, and they just believe whatever the hell they want to believe, and it is what it is. And I see the danger of that, which is why I don't. Yeah, I, that's why I don't deal with them. They're actually on the bottom of my list, like most other black men. White women are on the bottom. That's what that study of the online dating thing showed. We were the least likely to date them, and that's true because I'm one of them. So that's how it trickles into that status. Also, another factor that I didn't talk about when it comes to conflict is coupled with conflict is confusion. Because when I say conflict, I mean conflict in totality, conflicting statements. We talk about double talk and stuff. One of the good ways of keeping someone from actually taking action is keeping them confused. So if they're constantly being fed from, say, Fox News or CNN, two different opposite ends of the spectrum, conflicting stories. Nobody knows what's true. You're being told one thing from one side. They're showing their proof on, or whatever proof they might have, which usually they don't. And then you're being told a totally different thing from the other side. They're showing their proof or whatever, which, like I said, usually they don't have much. And then it's like, okay, which one do you believe? And it's that conflicting, you know, all this conflicting information that keeps you from taking action. That's one of the reasons why when people talk about, you know, like I said, you combining conflict and status. Oh, there is no racism. Okay, one group of people literally tell you there's no racism, then and then a whole nother group of people tell you that, well, actually there is racism, and then people in the middle is like, oh yeah, there's racism, but it doesn't impact you like that, and people just lazy, and that's why. Like I said, conflicting. All of it's conflicting, so you're like, okay, well, which one of these is true? And then you kind of have to. What tends to happen if you're never told the truth is you kind of going through life and you're like, oh, that kind of is racist, or then you go one way and then you see an actual lazy black person, which mind you, most of us aren't lazy because we actually have to work twice as hard, sometimes 3 or 4 times as hard to get the same. But you see an actual lazy black person and you're like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe some of those people that talk about racism doesn't exist. Maybe some black people just are lazy. It's like, and like I said, that's just how it is. You might not see what made that person what they are. They might have been beat down by the system so much. All those falsely accused black men in prison being let go from that, what is it, that organization where they're freeing all these falsely accused black men. This is historical fact. Yet people just want to, they still continue to demonize black men, despite all the conflicting statistics and studies showing that black men are actually some of the most active fathers in the society. Actually, we are the most active fathers. That beats down the trope of black men being deadbeats. Also, black men being aggressive. Well, actually, it's the black women that aggress against black men more often, and despite that, black men don't. You see what I'm saying? So it's like a bunch of conflicting stuff. You're told the stereotype of the angry, aggressive, lazy black man, and then you're shown another fact, the deadbeat father black man, but you're shown another thing, and that's where the conflict comes in. So it's constantly being fed false narratives, improper information, stuff that keeps you stagnant because you can't make a decision. You can't make a proper decision because you're like, okay, I don't know how to make a proper decision because I don't know what the fuck to believe. So it's that constant conflict. So if one person's telling you, "Hey, we need to uprise against these elite people. They got the system rigged," and then another person telling you, "Oh, no, they're rigged how?" It's like, oh, they're using racism and all this whole racism doesn't exist. It's just because some people are just lazier and black people are just this way. And then look at the immigrants. I mean, look at the Asians and blah 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 blah. And once again, and that's Conflicting stories, conflicting information, nothing gets done. People just arguing. A lack of action is taken. And despite whatever outcomes, like that person who tells you there's no racism, they can absolutely be failing at life. But they will absolutely, just because they believe there's no racism, they got overlooked for every promotion. And mind you, I'm talking about like a non-white person. They get overlooked for every promotion, but because they've been told by whoever, or they actually believe, especially the coons and the Sambos, they could absolutely be failing at life, and they still believe like, oh, ain't no racism. Nah, ain't no racism. No matter what, somebody can literally walk up to him, slap him, call him a nigga. He didn't mean that. Ain't no racism. It just stupidity. Just stupidity.
I'm not that big of a fool, and I'm not going to deny it.
So this conflict, when you're keeping people confused, you're keeping people fighting one another. You got to keep them from unifying. That's why, all these different narratives. Oh, black people. Oh, LGBTQ people. Oh, men. All women. Immigrants. Native Americans. And you just constantly just whatever it is you can put it out there. You just make everybody in some type of different group, and then tribalism and group psychology literally takes over. And then the people at the top, the elite, all of those groups got to work for them. So they're the ones benefiting while all y'all are working your jobs, and then you're going off in your life, and you're rah rah hoorahing for your group, whatever little tribal group that you're with. Rah rah black, tribe, LGBTQ, right? Rah rah this and that. Well, while you guys are doing that, and you're still going to job working for that company you're working for, because most of y'all aren't successful business people. Let's be real. You are enriching them, working for the exact same rigged system, and pretty much you're on a road to never making anything right. And there won't be justice. There won't be a just, equal system, which is what what I'm for. A just, equal system where, yes, if I outwork my competitors, I reap the benefits. It's not rigged in their favor. No one's trying to sabotage me. At least no one has the ability to sabotage me, and there's a system put in place to sabotage me. Of course, there's going to be individuals that will try to sabotage you, because there's just those type of people that exist. But the thing is, it can be compounded when you have an individual trying to sabotage you and an entire system put into place to assist them to do so. Just because you're part of a certain group, just because you're an immigrant, because you're black. I am black. FBA. I do rep B1. I am black first. I am aware of white supremacy. I acknowledge racism. And in spite of it, I will say I've had to work harder than than my non-black counterparts, but I'm still able to out-compete them, and they know it. Which is one of the reasons why when I get around certain groups of non-black people, they kind of tense up. A group of people can be buddy talking, and they all talking business with one another, sharing their little secrets and whatnot with one another. But as soon as I come around, and it's like, it kind of gets awkward, because now they don't want to talk, because they don't want to give me any information that'll give me an advantage. They might know some type of method or a program that can help you out, and they don't want to tell me, because they know that I'm going to beat their ass. So then they tense up. A lot of times they'll actually lie to you, tell you the wrong information. Like I said, sabotage. They'll try to sabotage you. That will happen. You will have to experience that, unfortunately. We have no friends. I'm just going to tell you right now. As a black man in America, Yeah, you have no friends. You will have to learn that the easy way, or you're gonna have to learn it the hard way, and you will become somewhat of a jerk. You'll have to. There's no getting around it. Either that, or you become a Sambo, or a coon, or a bootlick. You'll submit and give up. I was listening to a clip of TBA from back in the day, 7 years ago, and a guy, I shit you not, one of his ways of battling white supremacy was, and I shit you not, was having black men impregnate a bunch of white women to try to blur out the white race. this this is, I shit you not. I'm gonna have to post this in the description and probably share it with TBA because I remember he was talking about wanting to know about some of his craziest callers. And I think that right there, that dude was talking about, oh well, us black men, we need to have a bunch of sex with white women and make a bunch of mixed babies, and then they'll be considered black or some crap. And I'm just like, oh my god, this guy's freaking stupid. That was one of his solutions. All of his solutions, by the way, sucked. None of them were what Jason was talking about, which was, and at the time, I believe he had released 7 a.m., and it was economics he was talking about, black economics, focusing on the economics. Like Dr. Claude Anderson talks about the tier system, and the first tier is economics. You got to have that in place first, and then you work your way up in the system. And this dude's up here talking about let's have a bunch of sex with white women and make a bunch of black mixed kids and blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God. But yeah, there are those people that exist. Unfortunately, they do exist. But back to be on topic, conflict. So I hope you understand what I meant by conflict. How conflict, I don't just mean just the fighting. I also meant the conflicting information you get, the confusion that sprues from it, how it combines with the racism and everything, and the status. Also, can I mean all of these can couple with one another. To be honest, it's like a web of how each one intertwines. Because you also have, say, amusement, and I talked about how back in the day, to be honest, maybe even still be going on, how lynching black people was a spectacle for white people, like if they were to go to a zoo or a circus, and they would actually like take parts of the lynched black person as souvenirs, like they cut off their fingers or some crap like it's dark. It is dark. I will say that. But that's once again, conflict and amusement. Let them fight. Oh, of course, the gladiator times. Use that fight, and people will group together, kind of like today, where people group together with sports. Oh, I'm a Pistons fan. Yeah, go Detroit, and all that kind of stuff. And it's all about amusement, sports, and conflict, because that's yet another group. You have your sports team now. Could also be conflict and hope. I'm Christian, and someone else could be Jewish or something. Now we're fighting because of religion, fighting because I'm American and you're not American, and whatever, for whatever reason. And that's why I said each one goes with each other, and they all play a part in the system as it is as a whole. And that's just how it is. So I I hope that I made sense. I wasn't just babbling or rambling, making no sense. Hopefully, I made some sense. But as always, what you take from this is just information. Do with it as you must to do what you got to do in your life. Of course, as always, I always say, hey, if you need even better understanding of this, oh my God, that generator. If you need an even better understanding of this, always I point people to TBA, the business, TBA, the Black Authority. If that channel comes back, I'm not sure what's going on there, but the backup channel is TBA. He can explain it much better than I can. Much more articulate, much more wise. Go check him out. And with this information, you're supposed to be doing something. And so get out there and get to it.
Don't let me down, man. If you let me down, I don't know what I'd do.
So get rich or die trying, people. As 50 said. Thanks for watching. Until next time.
お前はもう